Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my 1990 Yamaha Banshee that I just got done restoring. About to show you how it all went down. Alright guys, so this project all started about 6 months ago in November as a budget Banshee build. It wasn't initially supposed to be a Yamaha Banshee. I wanted a 2-stroke ATV. I used to have an LT250R when I was about 15 years old. It was my first real quad, and I fully restored that. So I was kind of going for the nostalgia thing. I wanted to do another 2-stroke quad. I was really looking for a Honda 250R. I was also considering the LT250R again, but I kind of didn't want to do the same bike over again. Then there's the Kawasaki TeknoAXE or TeknoAXE, whatever you want to call it. They're super rare though. The LT500 Quadzilla, which I wasn't really looking for, and blasters are a little bit too small. So Banshee was an option. That's what I ended up with. This one I originally thought was a 1989. So I saw this quad on Craigslist. It was listed for $2,200, and I wound up walking away with it for $1,500. I was really close to not buying it. When I was looking over it, there were so many issues on the quad. It was unbelievable. I mean, it looked pretty cool and everything, but you can see in the pictures, man, it's thrashed. Everything was spray painted. There was a lot of overspray, stuff like that. Pretty much every single bearing needed to be replaced, and that's what wound up happening. My initial plans were not to completely restore the bike. I was going to just do a budget build, and my original budget was $500, and I figured that that would be enough, and I still do think that would be enough, just to make it a functioning quad and, no loose bearings or anything like that, have the engine running strong. But the more I got into it, and that's when I started my YouTube channel around this quad, people got really excited about the build, and it was coming out really nice, and I didn't want to be skimping on parts, and I kind of wanted it to look cosmetically just as good as it was mechanically. So I started increasing the budget. It went to $1,000, and then it wound up going up to $1,500. And at the end of the video, I'm going to show you my budget, exactly just how much money I put into this quad, but it still came out to a fairly budget-like build. It wasn't as expensive as you think. I'm surprised. It wasn't running that good this morning. It really doesn't sound bad. That I did end up buying this quad and why I chose this Banshee. The big reason, even though it was in such bad shape, was the fact that it had so many aftermarket parts on it already. A lot of these parts are expensive to buy. I'm sure you know if you've built your own quads, especially if you're buying them brand new. Some of the things on here, it had beadlock wheels, Elka suspension, +2 A-arms, +4 axle, ASV levers, 1 1/8 inch fat bars, a steering stabilizer, and this chrome Duncan bumper, which happens to be my favorite bumper pretty much on any quad. They're like $200 new, so it was really nice to get all that stuff on this quad, and even though they were thrashed when I bought it, I knew I could bring all that stuff back to life. So what I wound up doing as I looked over the quad further and further was replacing just about every bushing and bearing that could possibly be replaced. The A-arms got all new bushings. I wound up having to get new ball joints for the ends. I had to get new bearings for the swing arm, new carrier bearings. I put a new bearing in the steering, a new bushing for the steering stem, and just about any other bearing you can think of. The hubs I did, made sure everything was super nice and tight and straight. Luckily nothing was bent on this quad. And then the rest I just refinished. Everything was sanded down, clean, and primed and painted just to look like new. Now, like I said, I grew up buying and repairing and reselling ATVs and dirt bikes and all kinds of small motors, but I've never had a Yamaha Banshee. And all the bikes that I've had, and I've had a lot of them, I've never had a Banshee, which is kind of crazy. And so this was an entirely new experience for me. So I did run into a couple problems along the way and a couple of hiccups. So the first thing I did was I downloaded a service manual because I think that was pretty much a necessity to do this build correctly. And I also used a number of resources online to find all my information. The biggest problem I'd say I had with this quad, the biggest difficulty, was the bottom end. I was rebuilding the motor, and the first time I sealed it back together, I was using the wrong sealant. It was not friendly with petroleum, gasoline, and it would have worked initially, and then once 2 strokes use gas to lubricate, that would have actually eaten away the gaskets and then the motor would have blown. So luckily, thank you to the guys on Banshee HQ and South Texas Banshee. They told me that it was not the correct sealant, and I wound up splitting the cases again and then putting the correct sealant, putting it back together, and I noticed the case wasn't laying flush. It was really close too. So the one edge, you could just barely fit a razor blade in it. All the other ones were flat, and I was getting ready to put it back together, and I thought, you know what, I better take some pictures of this, post it up on the forum. Sure enough, people were saying you should probably split the cases to make sure. So that's what I did. I split the cases a third time, and when I put it back together, it was nice and flush. I'm really happy that I did that. Who knows what would have happened if I had tried to fire the motor in that condition. Another hitch that I had was the first time that I fired the quad. The idle was a little bit too high. I had the wrong jets in there. It wasn't synced up properly, and I really shouldn't have done that. And it wound up causing some problems that everything, luckily, I was able to fix, but it should have been done a different way. So that was one of the difficulties that I had with this quad as well. And of course, as always, putting the seat cover on is always a pain in the dick. And this one was really no different.
What the f***?
But I did get it done. I get a lot of questions on my YouTube page now asking where I got all the knowledge to do all this stuff. So I'm not a mechanic or anything. I'm really nothing special. Basically, I just grew up, like I said before in the video. I rebuilt a lot of motorcycles and lawnmowers, really simple motors, stuff like that. My dad pretty much showed me everything that I know. And everything beyond that, I would use the internet. Google is pretty amazing, and so is YouTube. That's part of the reason I started this channel, was to make tutorial videos. So I use those videos, and I use online forums. Like I said, I used Banshee HQ and South Texas Banshee. By the way, guys, if you're into Banshees, you should check his videos out, South Texas Banshee. He has some amazing tutorial videos. They're really in-depth with great shots. They're very clear. I must have watched his bottom end video 6 times over before I actually dove into my bottom end. There's great stuff. You should definitely check it out if you're a Banshee guy. quad did come with a lot of modifications on it already. There are a few things that I added to make it a little bit better.
Alright guys, so one of the first mods I did, I got these pod filters here. I'm going to get a lot more flow with them, I think, and it just eliminates the airbox, which I think is an ugly look. And I also cut all the tabs off and everything in there so that there's no excess tabs or anything where the airbox used to mount up. I also removed the heel guards. They used to be right here. There used to be tabs that hung down here as well. That's actually what tipped me off that this was a 1990, because it's a J-arm quad, which was from 87 to 90, and 1990 was the first year for heel guards. So of course, then I checked the VIN, and that was the tell-all there. It is in fact a 1990. I also upgraded the radiator. The factory one wasn't looking so hot, and this one holds 40% more water, so it'll keep it cooler as well. And of course, I got the Alba +2 steering stem with the bar clamps. I love putting those steering stems on my bikes. I think they just handle better, overall better feel. Plus, it has these dampening cushions in the anti-vibe steering stem bushings, and with two-stroke twin, it's kind of mandatory. I also added this case saver. Another one of those things kind of mandatory to have. If you break a chain and you bust your case, that's your own damn fault. And lastly, I got this swing arm skid plate. It had no skid plate originally. The places that I ride have a lot of rocks and stuff. It's the coal region, so if you don't have a rear skid plate, you can pretty much kiss your sprocket and disc brake goodbye. And inside the motor, guys, I have a Chariot clutch basket. It's a billet aluminum clutch basket. The factory ones tend to wear out really quick. The fingers get grooves in them and stuff, and it can create issues. So I decided to just get rid of that one, and I upgraded it to a Chariot billet.
So you know what they say, everything's 20/20 in hindsight. If I could do this build over, there are a few things I would do differently. One of the big ones, my frame painting videos, a lot of people ask me why I didn't powder coat. That I was kind of back and forth on. I think powder coating is a great way to go. It's just more expensive. But after sanding the frame down, the amount of work that you actually have to put into preparing a frame if you don't have a sandblaster is astronomical. I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many hours I spent sanding the frame just to do it right. I wanted it to be a really good bond, and I just don't think that it was worth it. For $200 to $250, you can get somebody to professionally powder coat a frame for you. I think in the long run that pays off. You're going to have a more solid finish, and it's going to take you half the amount, not even much less time, and you don't even have to do the labor. So that's one of those things I think I may have gone for it, but this was supposed to be a budget build. The whole idea of this build was, to show for people that may not have the money to build a quad like this, that you can still build a nice quad without, astronomical amounts of money. Another modification that I would have done differently, when I had the bottom end apart, these things are a bear to get into neutral. I've never even driven a Banshee my entire life, and I couldn't ride this one when I bought it because it was so thrashed that I didn't even want to ride it because something would have broken. And all the bearings were wiggling around and stuff. So I didn't know what it was like. I didn't know that it was tough to shift the Banshee and tough to get in neutral. So apparently there's a couple mods. You can do a shift star mod, like I said, and there's another one, the shift detent bearing, I think it's called. But, that's something I can do down the road. It's not like unmanageable, but that's one thing I would have done different as well. And the other thing that I probably would have done differently are the cylinders. I wound up going with the cheapest option, which, like I said, it was a budget build. That was the whole idea. For a Wiseco piston kit, you're looking at $150 to $200, depending on what size you get with gaskets and everything. And they have cylinder kits on eBay that come with jugs, pistons, and everything, gaskets, for $150. And I saw that and I was like, wow, it's probably the way to go. They're all stock bore and everything, which is what I wanted. And I wound up picking one up, and afterwards I realized that they're Chinese cylinders, and apparently it's very common that they're out of spec and they don't last very long. So luckily mine seemed to be okay. There were a couple metal shavings in the channels for the radiator fluid, but I'm able to measure the height and everything, make sure everything's in spec. And I also ported and polished. I ported the intake and polished the exhaust ports, and I think they came out okay. I also, in one of my other videos, I talked about how it almost blew up. And it's because it got so hot, it was running really lean. And the motor was running for probably like 40 to 60 seconds at full wide open throttle. It got stuck and it was dieseling. I cut off the fuel, I pulled the spark plug caps and it wouldn't shut off. And I thought for sure there was going to be all kinds of like detonation, and the piston tops were going to be melted and everything, and I was just basically accepting that I was going to have to rebuild the motor before I finished the quad. But I pulled everything apart and everything was great, everything was in spec, so it gives me a little bit of faith in the Chinese cylinders. But to make it clear, I would have rather used the cylinders that I pulled off, bored them to 66 millimeters, because I think they were around 65 and a quarter. I would have bored them to the 66 millimeters, and they have a very aggressive port, which I didn't even realize until after I pulled the greaves and stuff off. I would have just used those cylinders. So I'm actually keeping those cylinders for a future rebuild. The other thing I would have done is I would have chosen a different chain guard. The one that I chose is like the really common one that you can get on eBay. It looks pretty nice and everything, but the problem is apparently where it bolts up isn't the strongest area, so if your chain does break, it can actually break the case even further. So looking at other ones, I probably would have gone with the Moose or TM designs, which are supposed to be much more solid. So that's going to be another modification that I do in the future, is making this one more solid and less likely to break the case if the chain does break. So I do have some future plans for this quad. I'm going to be putting a 14 tooth sprocket. I might even try a 15 tooth. I have a 13 tooth on there now, and I think that might have been a mistake. Just putting around the yard here, it tops out really quickly. Not tops out, but I mean, I can only really get it to third gear just because we don't have a lot of land here, but not, to really open it up. And you're shifting so quickly. I think there's a reason they went to 14 teeth in 1989, I believe it was. It used to have 13 teeth stock in the front, then they switched it to 14. I just went down to 13 because I'm going to be doing a lot of trail riding and stuff, and I don't want to be bogging out. So I think it'll probably be advantageous to bump it up to 14, maybe even 15. I actually already bought this sprocket. And the other thing I'm going to be doing is jetting. I'm already dialing in the jetting. I've already put about 6 different jets in there. It's getting better and better and better, but in some of these videos that I'm showing you of it running, you may hear it sputtering a little bit or not running 100%, but until I can actually take it out riding and open it up, I won't have it dialed in perfectly. So jetting is definitely next on the block. Alright guys, so I have my budget laid out here just to show everybody. On the left here is the parts list and the prices that I paid. I have all the highlighted parts as the most expensive stuff for this build. So I have the tires at $155.99, which really isn't bad for 4 brand new tires shipped. The ball joints I needed to replace. A lot of people were saying that you can use like Volkswagen tie rod ends and stuff. I could have saved a lot of money, but I heard that they're not as strong as the ones that are made for the ATVs. So I've got American Star ones. Top end kit was $149. The steering stem was $160. The clutch basket was $170, and the plastics came in at the highest at $379.99, which really is good for plastics and a seat cover. So the total for parts is $1,732.01. Now if you come up here, these are the parts that I sold. So I have my air filter, the filter box. I sold that for $114. I netted $95.43 after my eBay fees and everything. The only parts on here that are kind of theoretical are the cylinders and plastics. And I put these in here just because it is a budget project. So if this was somebody, if I really couldn't afford to do the build, or I was trying to pinch every penny, I had somebody offer me $200 for the cylinders on a forum, but I'm deciding to keep those because I'm going to use them for a future build. And the factory white plastics, I think I can get about $150 for those. So if you factor that all together, you're looking at about $533.36 that I can recoup. So if you come down here, the cost of the Banshee was $1,500. And the parts was about $1,354.64. So you're looking at $2,854.64. Now I came to that $1,354.64. That is the price of the parts minus the amount that I recouped. So in total, you're looking at
28.54, 64 for basically a brand new Banshee. I think I did pretty good.
So that's it, guys. I appreciate you watching the video, and I appreciate you following the channel. You can expect to see a lot more builds on this channel. I'm going to be not strictly sticking to Banshees, but it's going to be my specialty, I think, just because I really enjoyed working on this quad. And I'm probably going to do a lot of 2-strokes as well, but I'm going to do 4-strokes also. If you guys have any certain quads that you want to see me work on, I'm going to be buying new ones, so new things to work on. Let me know what you want to see in the comments below. I'm going to probably be getting a CR85 pretty soon and a 250EX. Nothing too crazy, but it'll be a couple quick projects to work on. And I just want to thank everybody that's helped me make this project a reality. I really want to thank everybody on Banshee HQ and everybody on South Texas Banshee. There were a lot of times I went to them asking questions, and literally within like 15 seconds, a bunch of people were knocking down doors to help me out. So it really is much appreciated. So thank you very much. Thanks to everybody else that helped me out. And thank you very much for watching my channel. I will see you all in the future, and I appreciate you all. Thanks again for watching. And as always, guys, please comment, like, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. I appreciate it.